We're coming to you with breaking news from Capitol Hill.
The House Republican Conference has just selected Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan to be their new nominee for Speaker of the House.
CBS News congressional correspondent Nikole Killion joins us now. Nikole, do we know how close this vote was?
Well, we are still waiting to hear from the Speaker-designate Jim Jordan, but we do know that there was applause heard in the room as he was elected as the Speaker nominee. Of course, this doesn't come as a huge surprise because Jim Jordan had really been in the running all along. He initially went up against Steve Scalise, the majority leader, but Scalise withdrew from that race last night. This morning, I caught up with Jim Jordan, and he confirmed that he was going to run for a second time, and that this time he was confident that he had the votes, because keep in mind he did lose to Scalise earlier this week by a narrow margin, by about 14 votes. So it will be interesting to see what the final margin is here.
Still, actually, though, Nikole, we just got word. Sorry, I just want to update our viewers because this is all happening live. It's breaking news. The vote for Jordan was 124 for and 81 opposed. Sorry, Nikole, please continue.
Yeah. So. No problem. But the point I was going to make is no matter what the vote tally is coming out of this secret ballot, as we know, Jim Jordan or whoever was going to emerge as the Speaker nominee was going to need 217 votes on the House floor. So this means that there is still some work that Jim Jordan will have to do to try to shore up more votes. And for that reason, it's unclear if we will move to a full vote on the House floor tonight, this weekend. You know, I did speak with Nikole Malliotakis, a Republican from Long Island, who is actually one of the ones who gave a nominating speech in Jim Jordan's favor. And she made the point that she believes that he is a team builder, that he is someone that can bring both centrists, moderates, conservatives together. That was the argument that she made to the conference before he was elected. But she did acknowledge to me that he may want to spend some time to try to shore up additional votes ahead of a final vote on the House floor. Well,
that's part of what's really interesting about this, because even though Jordan is doing better than in the last vote between Scalise and Jordan, it looks like he has about 18 more votes than the last time you were reporting on this, Nikole. That's still 81 people who are not signed on. And with him only being able to lose 4 or 5 votes, depending on the people there, are you hearing anything more about concessions that he's making or demands that you're hearing from other Republicans?
Well, I think the concern that some members have, you know, no matter who comes out of this on top, you know, you're always going to have kind of a small core group that may not want to go along with the majority. You know, in this case, you know, there are still a lot of hurt feelings about how this all went down, how it went down with Scalise earlier this week, how it went down last week with McCarthy being ousted. So, for instance, you have Florida Congressman Carlos Jimenez, who continues to say after all of these meetings that he is, quote, only McCarthy and is only going to support Kevin McCarthy, even though the former speaker was not nominated, is not on the ballot. So, you know, there are people who are holding out for different reasons, and it will be up to Jim Jordan to see if he can get them on board. You know, one thing he is unlikely to count on is Democratic support. I did talk to former Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, longtime Democratic leader, who's kind of, along with the rest of Democrats, kind of watching and waiting for this situation to play out. And he, you know, point blank just said that Jim Jordan is not really the type of person that he thinks Democrats will be able to work with. So, you know, it's unlikely that Democrats would kind of step in here in any kind of scenario. And again, even if Jim Jordan does get elected, it could still be a very polarizing environment between both parties.
I want to go back to the 8 folks who essentially voted out McCarthy. and these two, or at least the 2 candidates at one point in time, Steve Scalise and Jim Jordan, they're both McCarthyites. So how will all of that jive in this play for Jordan as he now rides with this nomination?
Well, he will be a different type of leader, and that is something that people will have to grapple with in terms of the Republican conference as far as making their decision, because Jim Jordan is not someone who has come up through the leadership ranks, even though he has been a very prominent member of the Republican conference. It's worth reminding people that he is the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. He is one of the top Republicans who is currently leading the impeachment inquiry against President Biden. He has been a top ally of former President Trump, got Trump's endorsement, but he also is a controversial figure. You'll remember during the January 6 hearings, of course, the January 6 Select Committee subpoenaed Jim Jordan. He ultimately did not comply with that subpoena, but, he did meet with the former president ahead of January 6. There was a lot of speculation about what he knew with respect to the, former president's plans, and that he, amplified a lot of the former president's falsehoods. So he is seen as kind of a controversial and polarizing figure. But that being said, he also is someone who is good on television, who is a good communicator. That is something that was a factor for many members. And like I said, many feel that he ultimately will be able to bring the conference together. And he told us as much earlier today.
Yeah, it's such an interesting point that you raised, Nikole, that he chairs the Judiciary Committee, that he has been a point person on these investigations into the White House, into President Biden, into his son, and some of those allegations that we've heard coming from the Republican side. I can only imagine if he is able to get the nomination or is able to get all the votes of his Republican conference, that it's still going to be a lot of difficult times ahead trying to get anything through Congress, a divided Congress, and then the White House.
Yeah, absolutely. But, I think the reality here is that this is going to be a difficult task for whoever assumes the role, even if it's someone who is a consensus candidate. What we have seen time and again within the Republican conference, as I raised before, is that you are always going to have some kind of core group. It may not be the same core group, but who is opposed to the direction of the conference or the direction of the agenda, or opposed to whoever is leading the conference. And, that is really, too, why some Republicans have argued, look, give us some time to work through this, because they do have some serious issues. As I mentioned, there's still a lot of, discord over, for instance, that motion to vacate, having one person have the power to be able to potentially oust a speaker. Many members still want to see changes to that rule. So there are a lot of things internally that, even if they emerge with Jim Jordan as their speaker designate for now, still a lot of issues that remain to be worked out.
Hypothetically, Nikole, if Jim Jordan isn't the guy, who's next up?
Well, that is the other big question. There has been some talk or chatter as to whether or not, for instance, Speaker Pro Tem Patrick McHenry, who's kind of been the acting speaker during this interim process, whether it's worth giving him more powers to be able to at least carry out the functions of the House, whether that is trying to get a resolution on the floor in support of Israel, or deal with a potential aid package, or deal with moving ahead with some of these appropriations bills and making sure the government gets funded by next month, because we are going to be up against another deadline in mid-November. Right now, a lot of Republicans have expressed some concerns as to whether or not that is even possible constitutionally. So, while he is one name that many people feel is a consensus builder and could do the job, a lot of questions around whether that's even possible. Some have also mentioned, for instance, Tom Emmer, who is the current Republican whip, who's kind of the number 3 in leadership, or was a number 3 in leadership behind McCarthy and Scalise. But again, there's been a lot of internal concerns within the conference about just promoting someone up the chain. So again, still a lot of questions about, if not Jordan, then who? Right,
yeah. Lots of questions, and we know that you will be asking them for us, Nikole Killion. Thank you for following all of these votes and different machinations. All right. Well, if Congressman Jordan does come out and speak, we will bring that to you live. We'll also have more on this story and the war in Israel next.